Our conversation tonight is really about what does it take to create organisations that are effective at delivering impact. Some of you, I don't know, may have heard of the Cobra effect. Back in colonial India, they had a problem with venomous snakes in Delhi, and the administration came up with a great idea. They paid people to bring in the skins of dead cobras. And it worked very well, and the cobra population declined. But then some bright sparks got the idea to start breeding cobras. And the administration saw this, and they put a stop to the scheme. Now, the farmers had a big pile of cobras that they couldn't sell, so they let them go back into the wild. So now we have a situation that there's now more cobras in the wild than there were at the beginning. I'm sure many of us have had similar experiences, well, maybe not with cobras, but having a good idea and finding out that things are actually much more complicated than we thought. I remember the moment when, for me, I first realized that for organizations, good intentions are not enough. I was working for an international development charity in Kenya, and it was a time of drought, and we went out to a village to talk to poor women about the situation. And they explained to us how bad things were. The rains had failed 3 times. And with that, their livelihoods had been destroyed. Livestock were dying. People were leaving the area to search for work. And during the meeting, something very strange happened. At the end, people started collecting money. And they took the money and they gave it to the field officer. The field officer wrote in his book, put the money in his bag, put on his helmet and got on his motorbike to leave. And I asked him, well, what's going on here? You're talking to starving people and they're giving you money. He said, no, don't worry, it's fine. It's the loan repayment. Look, 100% repayment. It's all fine. So I said, can we go back and talk to these women? So we went back and we said, look, what's going on here? You say you haven't eaten, you say you're starving, but you're giving us money. And they said, look, it's our loan repayment. We have to pay, it's our obligation. If we don't pay, we're not going to get another loan. So I asked them, how did you pay this? Where did this money come from? And they said, well, we sold a chicken this morning. And I was shocked. I wasn't just shocked by the fact that starving people were selling food to pay a development charity. I was shocked by the organisational failure. How is it that an organisation that 100% committed to reducing poverty is ending up taking money from starving people? What's going wrong in the organisation? Why does this field officer not recognise that there's a problem? Why do they not communicate this? Why is nothing happening? And that moment has lived with me for now some 20 years, and it's been the driver for me in terms of my work, working with organisations to help them be more effective. It's also the question behind this book. Why is it that organisations seeking to do good in the world so often fail to deliver, and sometimes actually hurt the people that they're trying to serve? To work out this, yeah. But this book isn't about failures. Catherine and I outline practical steps by which organisations can be more effective. We talk about how small changes in the way that organisations are designed and delivered can lead to real benefits and improved outcomes for clients. In the book, we present 6 insights, and obviously we don't have time to go into detail about those insights tonight. But broadly, the insights fall into 3 areas. First, it's about the clients and how the understanding of clients can lead to products and services that really meet their needs. Secondly, it's about the people in our organisations and how we actually deliver those products and services. And third, it's about the business model, how we build organisations that really deliver what they're trying to set out to do. The book is a story of AMK. I think people are familiar with AMK. It's a microfinance organisation in Cambodia, and it's the story of how a struggling development programme transformed into one of the most successful social enterprises in the world. It's also a story about Concern, and Concern's role in creating AMK, but particularly in terms of maintaining that focus on poverty outreach and impact, which means that AMK has maintained its focus and avoided the mission drift that has affected so many microfinance organisations in the world. So why is AMK interesting? First, it's about scale. We've heard how AMK now serves some 400,000 people, touching the lives of nearly 2 million. It does this through a network of 140 offices, 1,800 staff, 1,200 savings agents. And every time I do this presentation, I have to change the numbers because they keep going up and up. But it's not just about numbers. AMK's poverty focus really means that it goes and reaches out to the poor people. So 50% of AMK's clients live below the poverty line compared to 20% in Cambodia. All of this would be meaningless if it didn't achieve some positive outcomes for the clients. And AMK's rigorous internal research demonstrates that the clients are moving forward and benefiting in terms of improved livelihoods. But AMK is also a business. In 2013, it generated some $3 million of profit, a return on equity of 18%. And that performance is leading to both commercial as well as social investors. So the first part of the book is about the clients. Everyone talks about a focus on clients, being responsible, being responsive to clients. But for AMK, they have really focused on not just the client wants, but the client needs. In microfinance, most microfinance organizations recognize that if you're giving a loan to people, you need to understand people's capacity to repay. You need to do a loan appraisal. But for AMK, it goes further. AMK recognizes that to do a loan appraisal properly, you actually need to visit the person in their home. You need to actually observe what they're doing. You need to get a good understanding of their livelihood. Doing a home visit is complicated. It adds time. It adds money to the process. And clients don't want this. What clients want is fast service. But AMK recognizes that clients need that home visit. We make many assumptions about clients. We make assumptions about who they are. We make assumptions about what they need. We make assumptions about how they use their products and services. In Cambodia, the assumptions that microfinance organizations made was that rural people needed loans that they repaid at the end of the harvest. But AMK asked the question. They didn't just make that assumption. They went out and they did research and they tried to understand the lives of the people that they were serving. And what they recognized is that actually people's lives were much more complex. The income sources were much more varied. People had money at different times. And people's expenditures were very erratic. People didn't just need a loan to invest in agriculture. They needed money to pay for emergencies. They needed money to pay for school fees. They needed money to pay for those anticipated day-to-day and life cycle things that are happening. So AMK took that understanding and they translated it into a product that is much more flexible than most microfinance products. It gives flexibility about when people draw down the loan. So rather than having to take all the money in one go and pay interest for a loan that you're not using, clients can draw down the loan when they need it. And there's also flexibility around when people can repay. To implement that product, AMK had to have the conversations within the organization. It was seen as something risky. There was resistance at the board level, there was resistance from management, there was resistance from field staff, a sense that a flexible loan was going to be harder. So they had to have that conversation and build that buy-in to the organization. The second part of the book is about the people. We can have great products and services, but it's the people that deliver them. It's hard working in this sector. Not everybody has to cross a river on the way to work. But how do we create that commitment amongst the staff? What we see in our work is very often a reality gap between theory and practice, that organizations are not clear about what is it that they really need to do to deliver impact, that organizations are not managing what matters. At some stage in AMK's journey, the home visit quality started declining. With pressure to grow, with management taking the eye off the ball, staff started taking shortcuts and stopped doing those home visits in many cases. AMK management responded in a tough way. They implemented a zero-tolerance policy for the home visit. And I was talking to Pete earlier, and he was saying some 30 staff were fired for not doing those home visits. But it's not all about command and control. We can't manage everything. So how do we build that understanding? How do we build that commitment? How do we ensure that staff are really engaged with what we're doing and they are giving that feedback so that when things are not working, we hear about it, that we have conversations and that we really are improving what we're doing? For AMK, that starts with valuing the staff. So if you look at AMK staff, their pay and condition is actually very good for the sector, particularly at the junior level. The second part was really breaking down this hierarchy that you find in Cambodia and other Southeast Asian countries. So when you go into the office in AMK, it's actually very hard to see who is the manager and who's the junior staff. Everybody wears the same uniform. People call each other brother and sister rather than sir or madam. That hierarchy is also broken down in terms of the way that staff are treated. I was really amazed when I went out to the field that the driver that took us out to the field sat with us at lunch. So I was with senior management or the CEO, and the driver sat with us and joined in the conversation. In the evening, when we went to the hotel, the driver stayed in the same hotel with us. In my experience over 20 years, always the driver just disappears and goes off and stays somewhere else, and we're staying in a nice hotel. The CEO and the driver get the same per diem at AMK. There's an equality, and that equality breaks down barriers and it allows conversations. People can talk to each other. People at the same level talk, but it's also across the hierarchy people talk. This is supported through the structures of AMK. So I think Pete was the person who introduced these open houses. And so twice a year, the senior management from AMK go out to every single branch in the organisation. And this is a chance for dialogue between management and staff. So staff give feedback, they raise questions, they raise concerns, they make suggestions. Management can give information about how the organisation is progressing, reinforce the values, and really communicate back to the staff. This is also done at the board level. So AMK has what they call the Social Performance Committee of the board. And this is a committee that meets to really think about the social value of the organisation. They meet for a full day before every board meeting, and they look at the data produced by the research department, and they consider decisions that are going to be made, and they think about the implications for those decisions to clients. What's interesting about this committee is that it's not a sort of a small thing on the side, a rubber stamp. Those conversations that happen during that day are seen as interesting and important, so much so that most of the time the entire management team and the entire board join that committee. So we have the products, we have the people to deliver them. The third part of the book is about the business model. The question here is how do we ensure that the vision for what is possible is not limited by conventional wisdom? How that we can start with intent and not limit that intent by people saying things are not possible. So for AMK, the commitment was to go out and reach poor people. This was something that at the time in microfinance worldwide, the conventional wisdom had it that microfinance organisations could not sustainably, certainly not profitably, serve very poor people. But AMK's commitment was to start with the most rural, start with the most remote parts of the country. Again, Pete, I think, called it the owning the dirt road. And AMK had this, what they called an outside-in growth strategy. They started with the most remote areas and they gradually moved in. Whereas every other organisation in the country was focusing on those areas close to the towns. This certainly wasn't easy. It wasn't a cheap option. The infrastructure in Cambodia at the time was appalling. So to do so, AMK had to build a business model to make that work. And they did that by being more efficient and more productive than other organizations. So the client offices for AMK at one stage had something like 900 clients per credit officer, compared to 400 or 500 for other organizations. AMK cut many aspects of the methodology, streamlined things. But as I said before, they recognized what was important. They managed what matters. So something like the home visit, although that would have saved money, it was retained. It's been interesting writing this book, thinking about the history of AMK and looking at how things have changed over time and how the organization has adapted to the changing environment. Certainly, if you look at Cambodia today, it's radically different to how it was. Cambodia has become one of the most competitive microfinance markets in the world. AMK as an organization has grown, their capacity has changed, and the products and services that AMK delivers have changed. It was initially very much a credit-focused organization. It's now an organization that provides a range of products, savings, transfer, insurance, as well as credit, and through different channels. So looking at how AMK has changed, what's interesting is that understanding of clients, that sense of purpose hasn't changed, but the way that they respond to that has. An interesting example is to look at the response to multiple lending and client over-indebtedness. So AMK always had the commitment that they wouldn't lend to people who had a loan from another organisation. So if a client came with a loan from another organisation or took a loan during that loan period with AMK, AMK would reject that client. That makes a lot of sense because you're trying not to over-indebt people. But the Cambodian market now is very competitive and there's a real problem with multiple lending. So most villages will have 4, 5, 6 organisations lending in those villages. And recently AMK took the decision to start allowing what they call internal multiple lending. So they will lend now, give more than one loan to the client. And AMK's rationale is that it's better for them to lend more to a client, understanding that client, knowing their cash flow, doing the home visit, really being able to protect that client, than to reject them and send them to another organisation where that client is going to get into a situation of over-indebtedness. So what's been interesting about AMK, what's interesting about the story of AMK is really that understanding starting with the clients and how that's built into an organisational model and how that business model has been built to really deliver on intentions. So I'd like to hand over to Catherine now, who's going to say a little bit more about AMK and her perspectives in writing the book. And then I'm sure we're going to have plenty of time for discussion and to share and hear your experience as well. So thank you.